and hope we start from there.
So this is a long, long time that it's been going. And we're happy to have our visitors here. They've gone around the entire local governments where we've been working. They've talked to state government officials as well, in Delta, Bayelsa, and River states. So we've kept them extremely mobile for the last 2 weeks, and I think they've seen a lot. We're all looking forward to seeing what they have to tell us of their findings. And part of the idea is that they're going to present their findings, and then you're going to tell them, is this accurate? Have they captured what you think has been said about the project? So in addition to their formal presentations, we would very much value your honest opinions and reactions. So please feel free to speak when they've finished. And we'll put it all together for the final report. And after the presentation, you're invited to stay for lunch. So we thank you and we welcome you very much.
I'm going to go into a bit more detail by talking about the findings in relation to the project logical framework. That is a summary of what was the objective of the project that was set out at the beginning, and we're going to try and see how we can measure the progress and see whether all of those objectives were met and to what extent were they met. Then we have findings in relation to the standard review criteria, and these are internationally accepted standards in evaluation, and Mike will take you through that part. And then we come back to and we round off with a set of recommendations. So the purpose of the evaluation, which was set out in our terms of reference, which was given to us by DFID and Living Earth Foundation, are to identify the achievements and impact of the programme against targets and ways that this may be sustained. To record and share lessons for LEF, which is Living Earth Foundation, a UK-based NGO, international NGO, which is the main management partner of this project. AA PeaceWoks, which is the implementing partner in Nigeria, and DFID, which is the donor. So to improve future programme design and management in both LEF and AAPW. To account to local stakeholders for the programme's achievements. So that's part of what we're doing today. And to analyse the cost effectiveness of the different approaches taken, and to enable DFID to evaluate the performance of the GTF programme as a whole. There are 38 projects worldwide in this GTF programme, of which this is one. And the whole programme is running simultaneously, so all of these lessons will be combined into a big learning process. A good proportion of the people interviewed say that they feel that the LGA is systematically considering the issues raised in good governance forums. Now, the enhanced competence of local government officials demonstrated through 40 projects addressing the MDGs. We found that the training modules of in the early years of the project, years 1 to 3, raised the capacity of local government in the middle ranks of the government staff, mainly civil servants. And that gave a basis for good cooperation in the Challenge Fund process, which led to 13 micro projects being implemented very transparently. And there was an enhanced competence then which spilled over into other types of projects at the local government level. It wasn't just the micro projects. So, these principles of participation and inclusion were extended to a wide range of local government projects. So we definitely would be able. We think we've identified at least 40 projects that follow those characteristics. Then the project showing characteristics of good partnering practice, functional in years 3 to 5. The majority of the micro projects showed those good characteristics. And then we've identified at least 10 other projects which show these characteristics too. So that means that this goal has, this output has been more than met. Now, moving quickly to output 2, which is about civil society able to influence change. The level of understanding of the role of local government and its duties to deliver services have been raised through governance forums, through advocacy and through social media. But we're concerned that more remote communities have not been adequately reached by these messages and this awareness. We find that maybe people who don't have access to mobile phones, or at least the new types of mobile phones. If you have a traditional mobile phone, you might not be able to access some of these new sources of information. And that, as you go out into the rural areas, you'll find that there's less coverage and less of these types of equipment available to people. So increased assertiveness of LGAs through a process of dialogue, and this is again these dialogues between local governments and relevant state departments. These dialogues were held in each state, and we found that the state remains the dominant partner and player in these discussions, but reforms may lead to a different situation where local governments have more fiscal autonomy in the constitutional review. And maybe the capacities that are built in this project will be helpful once that process is then finally in place. Now, this output is about the media debate and cultural activities. So, in terms of cultural activities, you have a collection of poems and essays, you have a music CD, and you have a communication toolkit which has just come out. And these are elements which have been distributed. We didn't see much alignment between these and the other activities in the project, and so the evidence of the impact of these activities is hard to establish. And finally, in terms of the proceedings of the good governance forums and state dialogues, these were published in major national newspapers. So that was very helpful to raise the issues nationally. And then social media has provided a good platform for discussion and debate around these forums. And we have AA PeaceWoks Facebook page and website, which became a critical platform for discussions on good governance. And it has 14,000 hits a month, and it's very active and engaging. So you have the blogs that are placed on the new Niger, and then people's attention is drawn to those from Facebook and from Twitter. So the traffic of the internet and the interested public is drawn to key debates that are going on around these issues, and especially in terms of this work on project monitoring. It's very, very useful, because photographic evidence can be placed at an instant, and officials challenged. Why is this happening? In those, if you like, safe virtual environments. So we find that that's a very effective way of pressurising duty bearers. And a very high percentage think that there's much more debate and discussion on good governance in the media in general than there was at the beginning in 2009. Now it's a very hot topic, and all types of officials are now grappling with their responsibilities in this area. So if the project is left behind good capacities, there'll be some activities that can obviously keep. If the topic is hot, then people will still be able to engage.
So what we found was this project was part of a worldwide program of a GTF program, funded by the Government Transparency Fund, and it was trying to increase voice accountability and responsiveness. And we found that this particular project and the way it had been implemented, its project approach, was very significant with respect to increasing voice accountability and responsiveness. And Stuart has shown you against the log frame indicators some of the measures that were used to objectively verifiable indicators. We also find that the project, in terms of relevance, is in line with good governance, transparency, and accountability initiatives at the federal level. There's quite a lot going on in Nigeria at the moment in terms of trying to improve transparency and accountability. So we've got things like the Constitution Review that is ongoing. There's a Freedom of Information Act, and if that is actually, operationalized and effective, it will go a long way in theory to increasing transparency and accountability. You've got things like the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which the project tried to simplify. So it was very relevant in that respect. It's also in line with ongoing initiatives in the 3 states. You've got the Bayelsa State Transparency Initiative, which the governor is publicizing very much in his, how often does the
countryman.
Yeah, so that is highly publicized. We weren't too sure about whether there's similar initiatives going on in the other states. Perhaps you can advise us about that. Then it was also related to a number of other gifted programs, including STAND, which was state transparency and accountability in the Niger Delta. That was one of the early projects that gifted was implementing, but it had its own challenges. So it is relevant in terms of being related to other gifted programs. This project was there. And then we also found that there's a number of new initiatives and ongoing initiatives by the World Bank, UNDP, and the European Union on transparency and accountability in the Niger Delta. And actually, one of the things that we highly recommend, as you see in the recommendations, is that the lessons learned from this project are taken up by some of the other donors. In terms of impact, we found that overall, the capability and responsiveness of the 5 remaining local government associations, authorities. Originally, there were 6 LGAs, 1 dropped out, but for the 5 remaining ones, the capability and responsiveness to deliver basic services arising from the effective demand of by civil society had increased. That was what we found. But no formal change in transparency and accountability has been achieved. So when we say formal change, one of the measures, for example, is publishing or making of audited accounts, right, which we found has not been done. So here, when we go into detail, in the report, you'll see we actually use what's called the CAR framework, which is capability, accountability, and responsiveness. So those were our findings in relation to that. We found also that it addressed the intended target groups, as mentioned in the proposal, which was people living in the selected LDAs.
For Isoko notes, I mean, like when we came, I showed you the signboard there. Like people have different means of obtaining, and there's already phone numbers there. So you cannot complain from the house to the Setcom. And so far, the problem we have that most people don't complain. That's one. Or maybe they are trying to get out of the no complaint situation, because for a long time, like there was no way to complain to until about 2009, when Setcom was now established in the local governments. So we now have where to complain to, even our booklets. Like the key one booklet contains this charter of the council as well as the service directory. In that charter, it's to all everybody in the communities, the phone numbers and who to complain to is written there. So that even the websites, even the website and the Facebook page, people send a complaint that way. So in a way, the Setcom units handles it. Then as far as absenteeism, that's one of the big problems in government offices, not just local government alone. And I think it has to do with the fact that there's few jobs for too many people. Of course, and government must create employment for people. So you end up finding an office that normally should take 3 people to do a job. 20 people are doing the same job. So if somebody doesn't come for 2-3 days, it will not be noticeable because other people will still do the job. Apart from those who do the salary issue, because they must come to pay salaries for the workers. If they don't come to work, salaries could not be prepared. Well, I think since Sericom came in Isugos now, we have been trying to stop that, because every month we compile summary of absenteeism, and at the end of the month, the local government reduces, they calculate the number of days you come to work and pay you for that. Good. And because of that now, people now come. Although the new thing now is that they come with the money, they sign, but later they will leave. But at least better than not coming at all. So that's how far we are going. I think we are trying to improve on it. And on services, I think you got in charge with my chairman at home and told everything that we are open. It's just that the point they are having in local government is funding. The funding you see in the newspaper does not really come to the local government, because there's so many election bills at the top, salaries of the teachers are so big. At the end of the day, after paying the salaries of the staff of the local government, we have very, very little
operational budget.
Less to do projects, unless when there's an kind of bulk money that comes when the price of oil rises. That means there'll be more money, they don't have excess food. So from there, the local government will do one or two things. Well, at least for now, this in better state, the local governments are trying. But more still needs to be done.
Last question, and then we continue.
I don't want to just add one small thing. In Ethiopia West, for the time I visited, and we have a meeting, listen. And all got there, information came to him that the HPM already picked the attendance sheets. Mr. Austin Emmanuel was here on the HPM at that time. He came very early, and at about 8:39, those who were coming late will now scampering up and down and say, yes, sorry, sir, we have not an attendance sheet. The measures put in place to ensure that people come to work early and see. Then he was staying till almost closing time if it's around not having a meeting. So that kind of made the attendance in the government much. But the experience we had in Cuopa, at the time we took some experts, some people real estate of states. When they got there was nobody on that. It was terrible.
We are operators of a bureaucracy, civil service, and there are rules and regulations that governs the service. And the local government council is actually, in the case of Delta States, we have what we call the unified local government service, where we have a board at the state capital, which is responsible for recruitment, training, and discipline of staff. So even at this level, at local government, at individual local government level, we ought to operate by the rules. But in Delta States, it is not just the duty of Servicom. Servicom is there doing this work, of course. Servicom is an addition to what actually operates as a rule. Because the trend in the Delta State local government service today is that we have a local government service commission that is very, very committed to the issue of attendance to work. This gentleman from Mexico North almost said it all. It's a government disease, not only local government disease per se. The local government council, as is operated in Nigeria now, is almost like a whipping shy of every other arm of government, and also of even the popular, because the local government council is closer to the grassroots. They are the people that they see from day to day. The complaints come to the local government councils per se, because if I need to hit somebody when the president is close to me, the person I will hit. You are the government at this level, what are you doing? The truth of the matter is that local government council are unable to operate because, one, they lack what we call autonomy. Two, they are not sufficiently funded. And three, there is too much interference, too much load of work coming to the local government council. The local government council, if you look at the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you see the laws we call the exclusive list, the concurrent list, and all that. But you see that local government council spends money on even maintaining police, INEC, and all of that. So what the local government council is not supposed to budget for, because anything that is on your exclusive list is the prerogative of either the state or the federal government. If it's a concurrent list where we can do legislation, and budgeting is law. You know, so how is it possible for local government council to spend money on INEC and also on the police when that is on the exclusive list of the federal government council for the federal government, for example? So on the issue of attendance, the local government system, like you said, there is overemployment. That is for sure. And so when you employ young, vibrant persons who are looking for a job, you ask them to put on their suit and tie every day to come to the office. They sit from Monday to Friday, from 1st to 31st, doing nothing. Over time, you know, the idle mind is devil's workshop. Over time, you see that lethargy will set in and people will tend to pray truancy. But when you're talking about Sagbama local government, I think it's a problem with local government councils in remote rural areas. It's a problem with local government councils in remote rural areas. For example, most of those who will be employed and posted to those local government councils don't live within that local government council. And the system of transportation to those councils, especially if it's a riverine community, it becomes difficult. So you see that people tend to operate from the urban centers to those local government councils. So maybe they say 2 times a week, 3 times a week, you know, except of course, and now there are few local government. When we started this work a long time ago, every local government will have a staff quarter. How many local government councils in the federation now can boast of having staff quarters where their staffers are quartered? So if somebody is to come from Warri here, you go to Burutu and then you don't have any conducive environment for you to stay. You know, you tend to do that. So all those are systemic problems that are actually can be addressed within the framework of a larger cooperative DCD. The government must take up to its responsibility in that regard. Then for the issue of a local government not having up to 20% of the staff coming to work, I think that situation is unacceptable, and it cannot happen in a state like Delta State, for example, where we are required to submit attendance lists every month to the Local Government Service Commission. But if you don't come, 7 days of our absenteeism is compulsory. I mean, what do you call it? Summary dismissal. So,
7 days?
Yes, 7 days. You lose your job. Well, this is a good program, and that I can attest as an administrator of at the local government level that the program and the training actually helped to build capacity amongst those staff that participated in it. You know, you said something about the budget, publishing of the budget and the audited accounts of the local government. Well, you know, we also discussed that, and I said that when this is all about capacity building, it's now that local governments are beginning to host their websites, and then we need a lot of capacity building for people who have the technical knowledge to help us do this. And then one of the problems we have in the local government, when we talk about budgeting, usually, I think it's a problem. It's a third world problem. As it is. It's even a state problem. It's a local government problem. How do you get about, you know, bringing out a workable budget, a budget that is feasible? Yet, and then, you know, people actually need to be trained. That is why what I'm trying to say now is making a request. If it is possible for this particular program to bring out something that, because we don't touch the fundamentals, whatever it is we are going to do will just be cosmetic. We need well-trained budget officers.
Okay. Can we come back to it as soon as we finish the presentation?
Yeah.
So can I just, but what we mean by that is that at the state level, it's a big machine, and it takes time to get to grips with what is, in order to burrow into this kind of bureaucracy and find out who are the people who are relevant. What we're looking at here is creating a better environment and better resources for local government. Who is it at the state level who's responsible for that? Who can, you know, if you like, ensure that greater resources are allocated to local governments in order for them to deliver their services more effectively? There is a lot of those things are dealt with at the state level ultimately. And so, it should have been maybe right from the word go in year one, a systematic attempt to create a strategy in which the states would dialogue very effectively with the local governments in order for those resource constraints that we've been talking about, to increase the operational budget, to reduce the, the ghost workers, and just deal with it. This Bielsa state initiative sounds very fantastic, but it's, as you say, even after 1 year, it's not showing much results yet on the ground. Maybe it will, as years go by. But some of the problems are actually, it's not all about the state doing things to the local government. The state has to also get its act in order. There are so many issues that need to be dealt with at the state level, which then would make the life of the local government easier. So that's why we say this is a big challenge, and maybe the project didn't spend enough effort on this particular aspect.
There was a policy dialogue between state and local government, but we think that was maybe not enough, because all the time we were talking to people within the local government, we were telling them their hands are tied by the state. That was the problem we found there. In terms of sustainability, we found that the sustainability of the project initiatives and innovation is highly dependent on the will of the LG executive to adopt an institutional instance. Now, I think we'll open this up for discussion at the end of the presentation. But the initial discussion we had, for example, with His Highness, with Chief, we asked him about it, right? Because we were finding that there's a very thin line between the local government chairman and local government. So it's almost like the local government chairman is local government, right? Yeah. Everything that local government does is dictated by local government chairman. So, because of that, sustainability will be highly dependent on the executive, right? For example, in one of the reports that we read, the Accountability Corps had not submitted any reports for a few months. I can't remember which lot particularly, but it was where the politicians had been suspended, right? Now, because the political wing, all the politicians had been suspended, no contracts were being awarded, so no projects were being implemented, so the Accountability Corps said they don't have any work to do, right? So this is why we're saying that the LG executive has to really have a political will to adopt these initiatives. And then we're also saying that similar initiatives should build on the experience and lessons learned and the capability built in local government authorities and civil society. So there's very good lessons learned, and like you said, there's a number of new initiatives that are coming on. Right? We paid a visit to ODA in Delta State, and ODA has one of its responsibilities is to coordinate different development interventions and try and see what different development partners are doing. So AATW, although it may be moving on, should try and make sure that ODA is very aware of this program, of the project, and when other development partners come in to work in similar areas, they should then make reference to some of the lessons learned from here. They should be told there's actually local government staff who
know what to do.
You've got the accountability course, so you've got people who are trained, right? So there is a resource there that can ensure sustainability of these innovations. In terms of replicability, the OC training and the accountability and advocacy initiatives, these can be readily replicated in other local government authorities, right? And even one of the ways to use some of the staff that have been trained as change agents in other LGAs, right? So
yeah, I heard that Richard, for example, had done something already along these lines. Maybe we can hear about it, where you may have visited other local authorities to explain the work that we've been doing. I mean, we can come back to you. I think I heard something from somebody, and I didn't quite pick it, so let's hear about it.
Actually, there's this monitoring team from the state governments that went around to monitor activities related to service delivery in the local governments. So they came to the School of Government Council and they went to other local government councils as well. And later, the chairman of the next local government now requested our assistance here to help replicate what we have done in Isoko North in his own government.
What's the name of that?
Isoko South. So the chairman and I went out with them and we are planning how to start off there as well.
That's exactly
yes.
the
Let
kind
me
of
just say one thing though.
Yes.
Wasn't this partly because Isoko South, 2IC that was in Isoko North is now in Isoko South? So he was willing to receive advice and assistance from them.
I think that's contributed a lot because today they came to Isoko North.
Yeah.
They also went to Isoko South and they found out that there was really nothing on ground. So the 2IC now told the chairman that where he's coming from,
Yeah.
all these things are already in place.
Yeah.
So the chairman now requested a meeting with us to see how we can kind of facilitate
So who was it who went
something
there?
in zone.
He was the second in command in Isoko North.
Civil servant.
As a civil servant, yes. He was the second rank.
So that's an example of transfer of staff,
Right.
actually doing
Yes.
that multiplication
Yeah.
effect.
Yes.
Key recommendations that we have as of now, based on our
After
findings,
preliminary review.
based on our findings with respect to the log frame indicators and also against the criteria and what we found in the field, is that the good governance forums, the local state dialogues, and the accountability core should be institutionalized through the adoption of the proposed bylaw. Now, just on this, the A and PeaceWoks have been trying to push a bylaw to enhance independent citizen monitoring of local government projects and establish a project implementation committee. So they've been trying to push this in the different local government authorities that they've been working with, and it has reached different stages. In some cases it went through, they tried to pass it as a chairman's bill, and others as a member's bill, so it's in different stages. But what we're saying is there should be some concerted effort to try and get this bill, adopted, and these various, the good governance forums, the dialogues and accountability co-institutionalized, so that if a new chairman comes in, it is actually, they have a legal basis. Right? So that's one of the recommendations. We also are recommending that the accountability board should be engaged to monitor donor projects, and should be linked to service and project management units in respective LDAs, right? We found that actually after the training, even though they were initially supposed to be monitoring mainly the challenge fund projects, the micro projects and the local government projects, many of them felt that they now have the capacity and felt empowered to monitor even the bigger ones. Right? So we appreciate that there are project monitoring units in the, within the local governments, and also at the state level. We also found they've got their own project monitoring unit. But the accountability core, because they're from the community, right, we find that there's added value in engaging them. And if they're linked to, properly linked to some of the more formal units, say within the state and local government, they will be able to do a much more effective work.
I want to know how much you budgeted last year and how much of this money was actually spent, and how did you spend it. This is something that has been made available to all of us by law, but the knowledge is not there. The willpower, just as people in government are lacking willpower, so the followership themselves also lack willpower. But I think overall, this is a good attempt, because we will continue to talk to ourselves like this. We will continue to educate ourselves. One day, I'm sure that we will get to where we are going. So I just want to say by way of conclusion that, like I said before, this was a good program, and I wish that we continue and that this program they should not relent, in the sense that, like this last one, that local government councils, that the state government, whatever it is we are going to do at the local government council, the state government should also be involved, so that, like this invitation that we send out to listen, if it was passed through the director of local government, for example, or through the project monitor in the office of the local government, in the office of the governor, you see that this invitation comes straight with the government force. You see that more persons will be in attendance there than they are today. So these are some of the issues we can use also. Actually,
now, because the system we operate here, if the social doesn't come from Asaba, nobody will be serious. It's not from Asaba. And if I want to recommend that instead of going to the State House Assembly to kind of enact a law that will take like forever, the Ministry of Local Governments or the office of the governor can be authorized to send letters to all local government councils that good governance forum and state dialogue should continue. But before it becomes a law in the State House Assembly, it takes a long time. Like why SEMCOM is working with some local governments in better states, because the state government enforce it, and people go around regularly to monitor activity as regards service delivery, and that didn't happen through the House of Assembly, but came directly from the state governments. If you could arrange a meeting with the secretary to the state governments or the commissioner for local government, because whatever you have done is in line with service delivery, which is institutionalized area, has to do with service compass. It's also has to do with service. It's like you are doing the same thing. Seven officers are trained, so you can meet with the state governments and merge it together to make it kind of authority.
I think that we have a champion in Majale, which is this Tonye Senna, and he has the ear of the governor. So, you know, we find, rather than maybe go direct, we could, because sometimes it's difficult to get that.
Well, that's in River States. Right. About Delta States for now. For it to be for some because like fortunately in this local north, we have the chairman who are interested in this.
Yes.
The first one was interested, the second one is also interested. So they have another one tomorrow that doesn't have time.
Can they discuss with the governor?
Madam can help you with that. Can get it to the secretary of the state government. That is easier with your government. Then it becomes better because the fear I'm having is this. The chairman in office now, they're leaving once the bell goes to any time. They have no tenure. They go anytime. And once they go, like you rightly said, it is the chairman that determines if the program is going to succeed or not the council. The council may have a plan, but the chairman does not have it as his own vision or vision. That program will not continue. So it has to do with if the state government gives it an order, like this one, the local government chairman promised to come. If he told you that he will come, but this one is simply in text that you apologize that he is told to come to Asaba for something else. So the day you have come. And if I had known before now, I would have impressed on him to either send his vice chairman or secretary to come. But he just came up this morning and it was too late to make paternity arrangements. But at least coming from the top to be better, so that they will see that it is their bosses at the top that have given them such instruction, and not somebody, particularly an NGO. Thank you.
We now have a regular stakeholders meeting before major decisions are taken. It's interesting to know that we have started implementing decisions from stakeholders and governance forums like this and the preparation of our budgets and plans for the council. Last budget, we had inputs from various points, and this also courtesy of this project. We also have engaged councillors because we usually have the role for the kind of have a cluster. The councillors are given constituency projects. Before now, we just do it on their own. But what we did this time around, in line with this program too, was to ask them to engage stakeholders in the various communities, so that the councillor will not just come and say, okay, I want to build borehole for my community, and then the council gives him money that will be able to construct the borehole. Does that, keeps it anywhere he likes. Now, Chairman is going to go back and engage stakeholders in the various communities. And then they agree on what the community would want. And they put that, we're able to include that into the project. Because everyone can include on something in this project.
This good governance thing, I think, is something that should be divided by all the local councils. For one, you go to a particular community and they come out and they say a lot of things. Even if you are deaf at that point, and you feel angry, by the time you go home and sleep over what you have said, you are human being with a conscience. Over time, you begin to see it. And I don't want to say that people should not be discouraged, whether the local government chairman himself, because it's going to be difficult. I use myself as an example. For the time I oversaw that local government, most of the time that we face for good governance, I will either be away in a state function in Asaba. Something will take me away. And then this may also happen with a lot of chairmen. This chairman was supposed to be here this morning. He has to detail his SSG to be here. And that is it. The important thing is that the forum is created and the hierarchy officer of the local government council is sent to be in attendance. And at the end of the day, the views of every person is collated and a report is written for the local government administrators to read. You see, whether the local government is there or is not there for a number of the time, as long as the report of that particular forum is written and forwarded to him, I think people should not be discouraged that the local government chairman was not there physically for me to have insulted him or something like that, because that is what the way most of the persons were. But I think, by and large, the feedback mechanism, is also of very serious importance. Yes, it's a game to more the local government and able to.
I'm saying is that this kind of interaction builds confidence and trust between the government and the governor. And I sense a real difference between now and 5 years ago. You know, and being a conflict manager, that I had an orientation that way anyway. But I think, for example, the feeling that people, local government officials, are willing to sit down and listen to their constituents, who can sometimes be quite aggressive, be quite demanding, be quite critical, but at least afford them the respect to actually hear their opinions. I think that's a very important part of governance. Okay.
What about this? When I mentioned about our HPM mentioned that recommended that these things should be enacted, that should be from the state level, especially from the House of Assembly, that will be boiled down to the local government. I think I want to support that area. Because by the time we meet maybe an aide to the governor or maybe the office, maybe to the local government to write a letter or to the information straight to the local government, it will not be properly, maybe at that very moment it will be implemented. But in Nigeria today we run a term of government, it's 4 years, 3 years. So if that person, for example, what we are trying to do today, we are trying to build human capacity. Maybe we might not see the result right now. Maybe after 1 to 3 years, we now see what we are doing right now. So by the time, if for example, if another person after this governor now leave this office now, or maybe the local government chairman, maybe the person that will now come in, maybe will not even keep on this idea. You see that every 2 years we break down. So why I now say they should go back, we should also not relate on the area of the House of Assembly. But by the time this thing is being enacted into law, it will be forever. The sustainability is there, the letter is there. Any person that comes in will always key to this program. So I'm in view and I'm also in support that we should not relent, we should also bring to the House of Assembly to make sure we sponsor this bill and enact into law the AAP, the accountability calls, you know, they should be well trained and well equipped, the monitoring and tracking local government budget and all that.
I think the problem we have in local government, I've been in the system for a long time, so I know what I'm talking about. The problem we have in the system is that we're having a lot of people who are not knowledgeable, people who are not interested, people who just want to come into the system to make money and go away. That's the problem we have. It's not that the systems, that's why I said that for the past 10 years, I can even say 20 years, how many local government councils have passed what we call a bylaw? In 20, I'm talking about 20 years now, you see that the only law they have passed is the annual budget. That's the only law they have passed. They don't even know what is a bylaw. Even in the legislative acts, they don't even know how to propose the process towards enacting a law. They don't even know. Somebody just sits there with a mace, wears a gown and he says, I'm the leader we have. That is what they do. It is a problem of, it is not as if the local government makes a law. You know, even your revenue tariff, the revenue tariff of the local government council is supposed to be a law. And after making a law, the local government council is supposed to publish that law. Otherwise, if you come to me, if you know our right, if you come to me that I'm selling division here, I want to collect equal license, I will ask you where is the copy of your tariff. If you don't have it, you cannot collect the revenue from it. Because without a law, without passing that particular fee into a bylaw that is duly registered, you cannot collect that money. You know, those who just stand by the roadside to collect money, they are all involved in illegal duties. And I'm telling you, if you go around to the federal government areas of Delta State, nobody for this year, 2013, has passed a revenue tariff bylaw. But they collect money. And so once the thing has been passed and has been registered with the Ministry of Justice, it is justiciable, it is enforceable in any magistrate, any law court. And that case can even drag on to the Supreme Court. So passing bylaws, the bylaw that is passed, any law that is the law empower the local government council to pass. The constitution empowers the local government, the state law, the House of Assembly law, the state House of Assembly local government law empowers the local government to make laws, to do certain things. All those duties that the local government is empowered to do by law, the local government is empowered to legislate upon. And once it legislates upon those laws can now become enforceable in any law court. You see? But the problem when we are talking about this issue of the state assembly, that's why I say we have community-based organizations here. It doesn't have to be only the duty of the PeaceWoks. You know, we as individuals, you know, we can propose such bills. Community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations can propose these bills. We can approach your member. This is something I think can improve governance. And I don't believe that with proper lobbying and pushing, this kind of law will not waste time because it does not take anything from anyone. It will waste time in the various houses of assembly. They just need to give it a push. And even if you go through a member can go adopt it as a private member for him to score political points. They will adopt it quickly and then before you know it, this man I pick this law. We don't know where it comes from. So I think we should think seriously about it because it's only when it is institutionalized that it becomes meaningful. A secular can this every country you are talking about now, even though with the push of this state government, another government comes, secular can come under the city body. You know?
And also keep in mind, passing the bill, this same bill was actually passed as a permanent government. But because the bill was not ascended to by the chairman, as a result of the political instability. Now, how did they pass the bill? It was also sponsored through a private member of the council of the legislative assembly. So I think if we can strengthen the capacity of individual members, because one, for you to succeed, sometimes you target those councillors that are very active within their fold, and also ask them, tell them the benefits of this particular bill. This bill will save the life of the day. If not for the instability that affected the SPSU, the bill was supposed to be passed because it was even himself who encouraged the bill to be passed, to be legislated upon. And the bill was passed by the legislators of the council. Therefore, I think, despite the fact that we should go through the local state assembly, the local government through the private owner can also.
Maybe it served as a good learning experience. Thank you.
Of the ignorance of the legislative arm. Then the presidential system of government states when you pass a bill and the president refuses to assent to that bill, after 21 days you override his veto. Yes. So, and you pass it into law and it becomes law. Then what that will take up food for thought for all of you from various local governments. It's a question of absenteeism. When we have more than 1,000 workers in the local government, and 800 of them are staying outside that local government, they are contributing to our poverty. Because all the local government money is spent outside that local government. So if your wife wants to book petty trading, there's nobody to buy. But if they are all staying there, working there, earning the salary, you can now see that it can contribute to the development of the local government. That is one of the ills of absenteeism from government, going to work in the office. I worked for 34 years. I never had excuse duty one day. Thank God gave me good health. I go to work every blessed day till I retire. And that's why I should be everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wrap up. We'd like to thank you very, very much for coming and helping us. We've obviously taken very close notice of your recommendations. We'll think through and revise our recommendations according to your ideas and thoughts. So thank you, and I hope you feel that it's been worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Government money now, our money. You enter government to pay for money. I beg you stop them. I be not no say people they suffer, people they hungry. Stop them.